So, my name is Espejo, as you all know, and I am the stained glass restoration director for Scottish Stained Glass and Church Stained Glass Restoration. And today, I'm going to be talking about your stained glass. In particular, we're going to, purpose of me being here is to rather help raise awareness as to the current condition of the stained glass reduced, and to just start the conversation of what restoration looks like, right? And a lot of you might be thinking, right, we raising awareness or stained glass. Maybe it seems a little bit silly, right? It's the first thing that you see when you walk in, right? Everyone comes in, the stained glass is right there in your face. You look at it every time you're here in service. Some of you have been here 20 years, maybe some even longer, right? So you're probably really aware of stained glass, right? However, stained glass has a very curious way of hiding in sight. And to give you an example, we'll kind of go to the slide here. Does anyone know what this is? Any guesses? So what? Yeah. But it's not a TV. Yeah, exactly. The pixels on a TV. Right? So this is what your TV looks up if you're just, really close to it, kind of my glass to it. And TVs do a wonderful job at projecting this stunning image, and we have no idea of what it takes to project that image. Right? It's made up of these thousands of these little pixels, right? And in a very similar way, that's kind of like stained glass. Let's say stained glass is like the original HD TV, right? That before electricity, before all that, right? I mean, that's kind of the original HD TV. You've got thousands of these tiny little beautiful pieces of glass that are cut by hand. They're all held together with these structural components. And just like a TV, right, where it's designed to hide all the workings that project this beautiful image, that's exactly what your stained glass is designed to do as well. It is designed to hide the structural components. And there has not been a single church that I've been to, not one, that's fully grasped or understood the condition of their stained glass, because it's designed to hide it, right? And it usually takes someone like me to come out and really uncover and say, here's what's really going on. And, when I was out here last year, right, it performed the assessment. You guys have access to the report. What I found is concerning for anyone who really wants and desires to preserve the stained glass. And so, that's what I'm here to do for you guys today. We're just kind of going to lift the veil and start talking. So let's go ahead and do it together. Sound okay? Yeah, that's great. Well, so this is the agenda. We're going to go through a couple of points here. First is stained glass 101. So anyone who's really not interested, maybe it's a little bit boring, but it's kind of like how it's made kind of thing. So it can be kind of fun. At the end of stained glass 101, you're all going to be, miniature stained glass experts. So just, be ready for that. Like to sign something for you if you like. After that, we'll talk about the current condition and the valuation of your windows, right? So now we're getting into your windows in particular. The 101 helps us just understand what we're talking about as the degradation routines to what's going on with your windows. Finally, we'll address the issue specifically as well as what's causing the issues, right? That way these sorts of things can be avoided in the future. And then we're going to talk about what can be done, right? So what can be done once the path forward. And then again, finally, like we said, we'll do a little stained glass tour. I'll open it up to any questions if you guys don't have, before that, and then afterwards, we can head on up and take a look around.
You got shoes.
So stained glass is made up of 5 components. 6 is kind of a parenthesis, right? It's made up of the glass, the lead casing, the steel reinforcements, there's cement, and the frame. And we'll just get into each of these components here. We need the base. Now, to play a little video here, this is actually the Kokomo Glass Company here at Kokomo, Louisiana. This is where we get a large portion of our glass. And this is just to show you how the glass is made. It's actually made the same way that it was over 100 years ago. So I'll do a little bit of a narration here. So can everyone see that? Is that like a 2-minute comfortable day? So they're taking these pots of molten glass from these furnaces in the back. They're plotting different colors together. And this gentleman here is just mixing and stirring this all up. That's when you get the wispiness, the different colors into single pieces of glass, right? So you get this molten glass here, and they're going to run it through this press. This is going to flatten it out to the 1/8 thickness that we get. And it's also going to put the texture in the glass. If you look up close in glass, you notice all kinds of different textures. And then you get these sheets of glass after it's cooled and annealed. It goes to companies like us, and we cut glass out of it and make beautiful stained glass. And it's again, this is how it was made. Even the furnaces and the equipment themselves, they wanted to keep that historic tradition. And this is the original equipment, I think, from 130 years ago. So they do have some mechanical issues, so it can be an issue. But nonetheless, it's really quite impressive. And a lot of the value in stained glass is from the glass itself, right? Even though they're using the same equipment that they did, 100+ years ago, the EPA regulations have come out restricting certain pigments and chemicals and things like that, where we can't get the same colors that we used to be able to get 100 years ago. And so some of the glass that you guys out there, and it's gone forever. And there's stuff that we can do to get back. On smaller scales, we can do replication with the techniques, but on large scale, it is just gone forever. Next is the lead caming. This is the main structural component. You can see there's little inches there. You can see the ends of the lead came. This is actually our warehouse. And this is the material that you would see. It just wrapped around the glass. It's welded and soldered together. That gives the main structure. Now, there are newer alloys with, different antimony contents, which really make the lead strong. And there's even lead that's internally reinforced. This is great because now we can make windows that can last even longer. And generally speaking, right, the sizes are about, maybe size to be nothing to you guys, but, 3/16 to 1/4 inch. I'll go up there, I think, and kind of take measure. I could show you the stuff on the glass. But back then, they used to make this stuff really thin. And so that's, not to be critical of the makers of the glass. That's just how it was made back then. We can take steps to greatly improve on the original construction of the stained glass. Now, next is the steel reinforcements. This is really critical here. This is very similar. This actually isn't your window. These aren't your windows. This is just one in our shop. But you can see the reinforcement. They either come round or flat. In this case, it's flat. I'm saying with you guys. So this is welded to the windows at critical points, and it is embedded into the wooden frame. And so, what this does is, I'll use my arm as a terrible prop, but this is going to counter deflection, convex, concave, right? So if you don't put rebar on or reinforcements, the window, you tap on it and it's going to do this sort of thing, right? And so the rebar gives it the rigidity of flexing inward and outward, right? That convex, concave deflection. Now, what gives it vertical support is embedding it into the frame. And that is absolutely critical. So over time, stained glass windows will want to buckle under their own weight, and having that reinforcement embedded into the frame is going to provide additional vertical support. Okay. And now this is just looks terribly messy and it just looks disgusting, but this is the cement in the mud, right? This is what gives you the air, a watertight seal of your stained glass. This also helps strengthen the glass. So once it cures, in between the lead H cane and the glass itself becomes nice and strong, so it gives a bit more rigidity as well. And this stuff, believe it or not, it really clings the glass. So this cup has a kind of a weird texture to it, and when it's polished and buffed, it makes the glass sparkle like nothing we've ever seen before. So, this is something quite disgusting like this could really say the difference in the cleanliness out in the fact. Oftentimes, this stuff you'll see, in windows later on. This stuff starts to fall out in time and it needs to be replaced. Last is the frame or the sash. This is, the main structural stability of the window. This is what the stained glass itself is installed into it. And again, like how we touched on, right, the reinforcements need to be embedded in this sash or frame. Usually there's, could be wood. In your case, it's wood, but sometimes with steel or aluminum, things like that. And I just put this point here about the susceptibility of the frames to fail, right? We'll discuss that a little bit later, but when it's wood, it can rot. If it's metal, it rust. And the protective glass is usually the culprit in that circumstance. So we'll continue talking about that as things to your windows a little bit later. Now, finally, is the protective glass. I put that as a parenthesis because it's not always needed, not always recommended for stained glass. In some cases, it can be much more harmful and degrade the life of the windows much sooner than they would if they're left uncovered. There are steps to prevent this sort of thing from happening, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. Ventilation is key. If they are properly ventilated, they can absolutely help improve the life of the life of the glass. But mostly where we would recommend protective glass is where the stained glass is going to be susceptible to physical impacts, damage from either vandalism or from storms. We get hail in Colorado, it's ashes to wild, or hurricanes, over on the East Coast. So things like that. And the final thing is just the value of the windows, right? If windows are, and some windows are very valuable, your guys' are quite valuable, as we'll discuss. But if a window is really valuable, it's going to be very costly to replace. Yeah, this can be kind of like an insurance policy. In those cases, I would absolutely recommend protective glass. You have very valuable windows. So now we're going to get into, this is still stained glass 101, right? So the general maintenance and life of the glass. So stained glass generally needs to be restored every 75 to 100 years. So an average lifespan of about 100 years or so. The glass itself, if we could last frame, right, has some breaks in it or some corrosive added. But the lead that we discussed is the material that breaks down, weakens, eventually can no longer support the weight of the glass. That's what needs to be replaced. And in this situation, this is a community center now, but this is a church out in Riverton, Utah, where the windows are about 130 years old. And it's kind of hard to say. You could see the glare of the kind of gaping hole there. They do have a protective glass over the top of it, right? And when they noticed that the windows were degrading, a natural response is usually, hey, let's cover it up. They covered it up, and about 20 years passed, and this top section just completely totally fell out, which is absolutely catastrophic. So usually protective glass and things like that, again, it does not prevent the degradation. It can almost increase it, depending on if it's ventilated or not. So now we'll get into the factors that impact the life. All right, so climate and environment, that's one. And one, I'll just kind of touch on the climate that you guys have here. I mean, it's really fantastic for stained glass. There's lots of complaints usually about Washington. Oh, you guys get like 1.5 days of sunlight a year, something like that, right? But really, that is absolutely it's a great environment for stained glass, right? And it's in part some of the reason why, even though there are some mishaps or some errors with the construction of the windows back then that we could write, it's partly why they've lasted so long. It's because you have this just temperate climate, right? It's cooler. There's not a lot of sun. It just, with stained glass, tends to last longer. It's very similar to European countries where, their windows are, 400 plus years old, right? And climate does play a factor to that. So that's a very neat one for stained glass. It's good. Like that. It's excellent. The environment's another thing, right? There's some, depending on where you're at in the city, there's some environments where you could be susceptible to vandalism and things like that. It's just what it is. Unfortunately, we can fix vandalism all over the country, fortunately. So, that's something to keep an eye out for as well. And we'll look at that because these sheer windows keep from the sun, right? It's a big deal on solar exposure. Right, east, west, north, south. North-facing windows typically last way longer than south-facing windows. East and west are kind of next in the lineup, right? They're right in between. The south are just taking the brunt of the sun and the heat all the time. Next is going to be structural design, right? This window here, if we take a look at that middle panel, right, it's about 9 feet tall, and you guys have to actually use as well. But there are certain steps that you can take in the design process that can counter areas of weakness, right? There are some designs like the repeating diamond pattern that you might see, right? that's really strong. That prevents, bullying, warping, things like that. Well, there's other designs where, to the bug tour, we can see where these points of failure, where they might occur and how that's happening. The other thing is, here in the United States, we tend to make things bigger, and bigger is better. We drive big trucks and things like that. And the Europeans are always like, what do you Americans do? Driving around these big looking trucks. But it's kind of similar, right? With stained glass, we want to make things big. We want minimal breaks in our stained glass. We just want it bigger, brighter, more beautiful. And with that, there's a little bit of a trade-off, right? The Europeans did a really good job of breaking up the weight distribution, of adding more mullions or horizontal supports that independently support the weight of smaller sections of stained glass that make one bigger fixture. But this is the way that the Americans did things 100 years ago. We're rolling with it. We figured out how to make them last just as long. So just took a little trial and error. Now, next is going to be the materials used. Maybe we kind of touched on that as well, so I'm not going to get too much into that. And finally, the protective glass. And the protective glass is going to come up a few times in this discussion, but improperly installed non-vented protective glass, it's the number one reason that we get calls. So premature failure of stained glass throughout the United States. It's this, everyone did it at one point in the 60s and 70s and so on. And now we're kind of dealing with the repercussions, and we get to look back and say, wow, should they have known better? But we have the benefit of hindsight there. But so don't try to be too prideful. What is that outlook for? So there are the 6 components that we talked about. And so when we look at your stained glass windows, we'll be looking at all 6 of those components and generally the things to look out for, right? This holds true for all stained glass. So for the glass, we're going to be looking for breaks and cracks, the lead cane. We're looking for warping, cracking. Didn't list it there, but daylight, right? Where you can see the separation from the lead and the glass itself. We'll be looking at the steel reinforcements. Are those separating from the window? Are they embedded into the frame? Have they been dislodged from the frame? We'll be looking at cement, as well as the frame itself, right? Is there any, it's paint chippings, the size of the and so on and so forth. And then again, the protective glass, it's always like a small peak on there, right? Is there any ventilation? So how does this pertain to your windows? What about your windows, right? And, at the end of this, by the way, I think you're all going to get what I call the pretentious stained glass side. And what that means is anytime you go anywhere that has stained glass, if you've been paying attention at all, you're going to walk up to it, people are going to be admiring it. Oh, look how beautiful it is. And you're going to be the person that walks up and says, yeah, this stained glass is terrible. And you're not to the one who's this. Yeah. All right. So, your windows, we'll talk about the valuation and the current condition. And these are some really big numbers, so just don't get too scared. But just know that your windows are very valuable. So these windows, we think that they're installed in 1909, roughly when the building was erected. And so that puts the windows at about 116 years old, which is really quite low. And there's 22 windows. There's tons of glass, right? Over 8,000 pieces. You got the high definition studio thing going on, right? So you talked about TVs and stuff, but the replacement value is just a little over $700,000. And what that means is if for some reason the stained glass all just disappeared, whenever the case, right, it would cost $720,000 for a company like us to remake and replicate those stained glass windows identically. So a lot would go into trying to remake those windows. They're really quite valuable. And if we take the antique value, which is the value of the original artistry, the design, the glass, like how we discussed before, that we just can't find anymore, those windows would be roughly worth $1.2 million. And so I'm just going to stop you guys here because I know what you're probably just thinking. Let's just sell the windows. That's it. Yeah. The country, no, we're going to see some people. Second, the windows are turning. Well, I could say, have you ever tried to sell a car with a broken transmission? Right? You probably could. You probably scrap it, right? And so the windows in their current condition, they do need to be repaired and fixed to restore the value. It's going to be very hard to sell someone $1 million windows that are falling apart. So we do need to make sure that restoration is something that will happen at some point. And so the general condition, the way I would sum it up, the very bottom, your windows, the current condition are age appropriate. And your windows are 116 years old. So there are going to be issues expected, right? We are going to expect that there are issues. And for anything that's 100 plus years old, there will be issues, right? And there hasn't been any restoration work that we found. There's no record of it. And usually you can tell if there's work that's been done to windows in the past. In this case, everything does look original, aside from the occasional minor air here and there, just replace a piece of glass that's been popped or broken. All right, so we'll go through here. This kind of reiterates what's going on. We are noticing that there is glass breaking, there's warping in the lead caning, steel reinforcements, they are separated, right? The old cement, it's falling out sections, and the frames we'll look at those. They don't seem to be in bad shape. It's just the paint is kind of chipping off, and we'll kind of look at that in a little bit more detail. And then the exterior glass, again, that is not ventilated, and in some areas, this color image doesn't look the best, but, and this is something that will have to be addressed because the way that it's installed could potentially be damage to the frames. Good. So what caused the issues further, right? This is the glass in particular. These here are some examples of glass that's been broken from physical impacts, right? Here we can see there's been an impact there that splintered and broken glass in this large section here. So some sort of past vandalism or some kids throwing rocks at things to be silly, how kids are. And then, here on the left, you can see that's actually a beauty hole. So there hasn't been a single church that I've been to that hasn't had beauty holes in their stained glass. So if they stick for great target practice, apparently it didn't quite hit the bullseye. So now this is an example of stained glass that's broken from stress to warping. It's probably really hard to see, so we'll probably just have to take my own word for it. But when we do the tour afterwards, I know mistakes around, it'll be easier to see these sorts of things. Sometimes it can be difficult, photo and projection and things like that. Now, here you can see that the lead caning is warping. So now we're going to get into the lead caning a bit. If you look at this image, you'll see it's kind of doing the wave, right? It's starting to look a little bit like an accordion, right? So when we talked about the lead caning no longer being able to support the weight of glass, that is what's happening here. And so it's beginning to bubble under its own weight. And when it bubbles, it will start to crack and break more glass as well. So that's when we talked about the broken glass before. Heat and unventilated protective glass. In terms of what caused this, it's probably the number one reason why this is happening, aside from the age itself, right? But that unventilated protective glass, and you can imagine just parking a car out in a parking lot on a sunny day, right? Because you leave all the windows roll all the way down, it stays pretty cool in there. It's okay, but when you roll them up, it trays into an oven, the hot air in there expands, it puts pressure on the glass. It's going to heat up sometimes it's less about the actual heat and more about how rapid the change of temperature that you get as well, right? So you get a nice cool morning, 40 degrees. Let's say the sun peaks out the one time a year it does. It hits the glass, right? It will immediately, the snap of a finger, it's going to heat up to 120 degrees. So it'll go from being 40 degrees to 120 degrees, and just like that. And you get this rapid expansion and contraction. And it just weakens the lead caning, and it just begins to bubble and warp under its own weight. Now, this here it gets still on the lines of lead caning, and still what we talked about this in the previous slide all still pertains. But this is just another example of failure. This is where the lead caning is now separated from the same glass, and you can see the daylight that's coming through. That is concerning. Usually it's just the windows now just kind of pulling apart under its own weight. Now finally, with the lead caning, you can see roughly some sections here. It's kind of hard to see, but you'll see where the, under expansion and contraction, the solder joints are beginning to pull apart. And so the lead cable is actually beginning to separate from itself. So it's no longer a continuous structure. There's a break in the structure, which is not good. Finally, the steel reinforcements. Here's an example of the steel reinforcement that is separating from the stained glass. So you can see there where the weld joints have broken. So it's no longer providing that deflection support that we talked about, because it's kind of just hanging on by a couple weld joints loosely. And in this case in particular, a lot of your windows do have the rebar that is embedded into the frame. This one in particular wasn't. There are some that aren't, but that can be resolved in the later process. This is just an example of the light of the cement that's coming out of the cane, right? So now you can start to see, right, that's what I mean. It's kind of wedged in there, and it dries and helps provide rigidity and weatherproofs. And now, you'll see it's pretty common for this stuff to start to come out at this key.
Yeah.
Now, the frames and the sashes, the wood frames, it doesn't look like there's any rot, right? You didn't get to get up too close on any of the sides here. Based on what I can see, don't think there's anything too concerning going on there. But you can see where how it's mounted. You get these screws that are drilled directly through this protective, it's like a polycarbonate or acrylic or something like that, into the frame. And you can see where it's actually chipping the paint and damaging it. As winds and things vibrate, those screws are just destroying the paint around there. And that's going to create a perfect environment for wood rot, right? Water, moisture is going to find a way to get back in behind there. It's going to have a hard time getting out, and it's going to find its way into the bare wood. That's what happens, and this is kind of what the start of that was done. Luckily, nothing like that's happened yet. So, and again, I'll move on actually. So, yeah, the protective glass, right? This is the final thing. It's kind of the smoking gun, so to speak. If it weren't for the protective glass, your windows have lasted up to 116 years. They probably wouldn't have lasted even longer. Again, the climate, it's beautiful, it's great, for stained glass. And that's one of the big parts. And the people who made it originally did a really good job as well. So with those two factors, your windows have lasted a really long time. But the protective glass is devastating. There is no ventilation in it. It's just screwed directly into the frame. Usually you can see little vent holes or something like that drilled into there to allow for some circulation, but there's nothing like that going on. And that is, again, causing heat buildup that's just going to be devastating to the windows long term. And you can see here, there's only a couple sections that have a protective glass that's fading, but some sections are just not the prettiest. So finally, what can be done? Right? What can we do about this? And so I kind of crafted what's called the 100-year plan. We firmly believe that all work that is done to stained glass now it's got to at least be better than the people who came before us, right? We've got advancements, we've got the advantage of hindsight, and we can, the work that should be done should be carried out in a way that the windows can last another century at least. Now, if proper steps are taken, right, the windows should last much longer, 150 years, 200 years, right? They should last a very, very long time. And there are, some of the steps that we talked about today will get in a little bit more detail, but if they're carried out properly, then there's no reason why the windows here can't have a similar lifespan to some of the cathedrals in European countries that are 400 plus years old. So here's the plan. It's broken up into an 8-step process. Right here, you'll see this is a church. It's a congregation of Israel. This is an example of like a before and after, right? Up top, this arch here, their stained glass that they had was literally falling to pieces. The top section was separated from the bottom, and it was just in shambles. And after we restore it, it's just kind of brought back to its original beauty, its luster. It's like the window was brand new. That window should last, for at least another century. But these are going to be the 8 steps in the process, and I'm going to walk through these, show you some videos and things like that, what that really looks like. So first is the removal, right? This is a removal that we did. This is First Christian Church, Columbus, Kansas. This is one that we started the removal last year. But this is what the site looks like. Everything's taped off. It's tarped off. We keep the work environment super clean. The windows are removed and they were temporarily boarded up with plywood, which really just doesn't look the best, but it's better than just the rain in the arid Amazon, for a couple months. But this is generally what things look like right after removed. Next in the process is going to be the template. So I'll show you this little video of. But what templating is we take the original design that you guys thought do like this, and take a piece of paper, and it's kind of rudimentary, right? We'll take like a crayon, piece of graphite or something like that, and go over it and trace all the areas where the lead caving runs throughout. That way, when we take the windows apart, we can rebuild them, remake them exactly according to the original. We create a numbering system. It's kind of a neat process. So this next step is the disassembly of the panel. So we soak the windows in the water for about a week, sometimes longer. And I'll just play that one again really quick. I know these are really quick videos, but what this does is it allows the old cement to dissolve. That way we can take your windows apart safely. And it also really cleans the windows substantially, right? All the old dirt that's built up over 100 years, it breaks up, dissolves, and really clean it properly so it looks brand new again. So essentially, next in the process is the glass cleaning and batching. And so essentially what that is we would continue to clean the glass another time after soaking. From there, we lay out all of the pieces. You might actually see a little bit here on this image where we laid the pieces out in the frame, but from there we can identify the breaks. That way we can batch the glass, so on and so forth. So let me show you. This is the assembly now. So from here, we take the rubbing, which you can see that's just kind of the rudimentary rubbing. From there, the pieces of glass are laid on there, and we assemble them and wrap it, and let's convenient, and then we solder all of the joints together. I'll just put it out one more time. And that's what his name is Ryan, and that's what he's doing there. He's prepping the solder to get welded all together. You can see him. We've got your beautiful stainless window. Okay. Yes. Again, when we assemble, we use the more modern materials, the reinforced lead, so on and so forth, to help increase the ingress. So finally, it's the reinstallation. Very similar to the removal. Everything is stripped off. We keep clean work areas. And afterwards, we'll do a FICO box inspection to make sure that there's nothing that's been listed. Everyone's happy with the end result. And you've got your windows, in better condition than they were 16 years ago. Last is the protective glass. This is a different type of protective glass system. This is an independent framing system that we're installing here at this church. It's different than what I would recommend for you guys. For you guys, since everything can come out in the sashes, you're in a really good position to bond a piece of protected covered safety glass to the actual stained glass itself. So when the stained glass is manufactured, we can have a piece of glass manufactured to the exact same size, and we can bond them together similar to like a dual pane glass window, right? And then reinstall that into the frame. And what that does is it prevents any need for ventilation because you're eliminating the airspace that would heat up, right? So you're completely eliminating that. The other thing that you're doing is you're creating an additional support, not just the steel supports on the inside, but now you're having this right up against the stained glass, which provides an additional support going the other direction as well. So now we've got glass that's helping structurally, and it'll help prevent any of those problems. Like that, it will prevent immediate impact. So finally, this is the cost, right? So want you all to know exactly what the cost is for this. And it is not a small number, right? $225,830 is the cost for the recommended work. That's including the protective glass. So I know that is, it's no small number. It is quite substantial. And the $192,000 price below it, that is if you opt to just, hey, let's not worry about the protective glass. Let's just focus on the stained glass itself. So the cost is, it's substantial, but the windows that you guys have here, like the saying and seeing they're really like special and unique, even in design. I haven't seen very many stained glass windows that have the kind of color palette design that you guys have. It's a lot of what I see is kind of like that Gothic type look where you'd see that window at the north side. That's very common. That's what I see a lot of. And so what you guys got here, besides the church, are really quite special. The final thing that I'll address is what happens if we do nothing, what are future costs? There are a lot of churches that I work with, that I speak with, and we have these conversations, and then they come back to me years later, and it costs us to have changed substantially, right? As everyone knows, turns out prices of everything just go up, right? Keep on going up, and there's just no stop to it. And so I do like to have that conversation, and so that's what this slide is here. So what happens in time? What do things look like in 10 years, right, if nothing's happened? So the cost of stained glass in general increases anywhere between 4 to 5% and 4 to 6%. So if you take the average of 5% and you apply that over a 10-year period, roughly, the $225,000 project turns into a $368,000 project. The reason for the cost increases, like we've talked earlier, about the UK, making it so we can't make glass the same way that we used to. They impose certain regulations on manufacturing that impact the costs, and then of course there's just the inflation rates that we all have to deal with. So you could wave a magic wand, poof, everything's done, right? In a 10-year period, it would save roughly $142,000. The magic wand's just a figurative thing, but that's just to help you guys understand the rate, how much does this stuff go up? If it came back in a few years, what are things going to increase? So generally speaking, you could expect a 5% year over year. The one thing I'm not including, right? And I'm not saying, hey, wait 10 years and things are going to be okay. I can't say that, right? One way or the other, sometimes stained glass, it's just, it snaps a finger, it hits its breaking point and it fails, right? Like the church in Utah that I showed you earlier. As things progress, there are other factors to consider. More glass is going to break. The wood needs to be addressed if things are like that. There could be wood rot if things are left the way that they are. And again, they're creating some sort of a failure. Again, I can't, I don't have a perfect crystal ball to saying this is going to fail then, this is going to fail then. But it's possible. It's happened, especially with windows at this age. So those are factors I'm not including in the cost. And just things to be aware of as you guys are, more sober playing. So, questions?
With this estimate, which I think sounds very reasonable, by the way, considering what you said you're going to do. But that's the
Are you speaking for everyone?
But does this estimate include taking all the windows in the church off and shipping them?
Great question. Yeah,
Your shot.
it does. The only one that it doesn't is this one that was added after the fact on the north side. That window is in much better condition. It's much younger. So that's the only one where you don't really have to worry about doing anything too.
Does the north side mean the one in front of the church?
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
What kind of warranty do you give on it? And the window is attached, the protective to the stained glass, and something does fail. Because windows fail now and they fail, or they get redone. Is that created fitted out on this back usually?
That's a great question, right? And a lot of people are shocked when I say that there's a standard 1-year workmanship warranty. But I can't necessarily put a 100-year warranty on it because our insurance company might have a country to say about that one. But yeah, that's kind of the industry standard.
So related to that,
Yes.
what happens if somebody breaks the protective window? Then how do you fix that? What happens?
Great question. And so that's why I would recommend a protective glass because that would help solve that issue. However,
I hope you would have insurance.
because unfortunately there's nothing we can do there, but hopefully insurance, again, I don't know what the policy is, but typically churches would have that covered in their policy.
But then it has to come back to you. If the protective glass is broken, stained glass is not, then does it have to be removed to come back to you to prepare?
It would. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes.
I'm going to question, we're trying to be really good stewards of our money.
Yeah.
And so we dump heat and air conditioning and other things up there if we even decided to do that. Is that harming our windows because it's making it cold, as hot, and not consistent? Or would we have to figure in the longevity here of, keeping that heated and cooled up there?
Yeah, a lot of people actually ask that question, and it is a good thing to consider. In short, no, it's not going to impact the life of the windows if you don't heat and cool it. So you're not doing the windows a disservice by not heating and cooling the sanctuary.
Is there any downside to the protective glass, visually, and the choosing of parity or active?
It is personal preference, right? So when it's uncovered, right, you get to see the imperfections in the stained glass. You can see the lead caving, and it catches light kind of differently. When you put the protective glass over the top of it, you can still see the stained glass, but you're going to get a little bit of reflectivity to it. It looks a little bit more like a modern look. It looks really nice and clean. A lot of people really like the way that it actually looks after the fact, because you can still see the stained glass, especially at night. I mean, if it's low light and light shines through, the protective glass just disappears. It's visible. The only time you'll notice it is if there's, it's dark outside, or not dark outside, but it's kind of dark in the sanctuary. The sun's out shining the one day here, and it catches the reflection.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, replace the stained glass window with the entrance back at the Levine that right now you can just go glass, I think, if the compliment the doctor's appreciation. The prices do go up. Cost me $500 of the property, man. Who knows? But what would happen if we took off plexiglass vehicles and it's so great? Is that a possibility? It is, if we can afford it, because this is a huge expense for us to use Apple. Extended for right now in the budget for increase our compensation extra 50%. They instantly and owes this project unless it's fully funded. If it's fully funded, I'm not going to take care of it. Windows just like they did to me 40 years ago. Yes, they need battery. They are new, but if we have an earthquake that moves somewhere the churches should be redone. Hail damage and tornadoes. We don't talk about earthquakes here in the Northwest, so we're at the bottom of the but we could also do these windows and have earthquake and then be right after the storm. I do like the flashy public windows. I don't know who did it years ago, 50, 60 years. But these all stone that say wood frame. In the Northwest, we have a lot of wood rot. Or wood comes in and it rots down all around the things. But here we have to protect the wood basements.
So Phil, just real quick, what's your question again? Because you made a lot of comments, but your first question, what? Kevin, is there another thing because you
For some plastic, you kill the little so it fixed so it's ventilated. At least that's that's 4 reasons per year.
yeah, so
For instance, yes, can protect you 10 pounds. That will help. That would help. Yeah.
so but then my follow-up but that's not going to change the damage that already exists. It'll just slow it down.
No, it'll slow it down. Yes.
Yeah, we ever have a problem with arena this small. And that may the bad thing is we do have tragedy.
That's right.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
You're using lead, you're using a mod deck, but this CSC is classified. What thing about gassing is possible with these types chemical use?
Oh, yeah,
Estimators or so.
Oh, it's a great question. I'm not the engineer, so I couldn't tell you anything specific, but the outgassing is a concern. Usually we would have the windows, thoroughly cured right before we bring anything in or install any kind of protective glass or have that kind of outgassing. So, I hope that answers your question. If not, then we can make it afterwards.
One point, the covering, protective covering was because of the recommendation of our insurer, that you will walk through every year or so, and insurance point it out. All right, the question, the north window, the priced and through the state window, just vaguely, what kind of cost would it be to have that replaced with one that has a similar artistic theme as the other would be?
Tom, that's a good question. I unfortunately I couldn't tell you. I could get that to you guys after the fact if you'd want to have an idea of what that would cost. But yeah, it's a good question. If I told you a number now, it would be wrong, and I'd be really mad at you.
Okay.
So I'm not going to try to do that. Up here, but yeah, I can work that out with you guys if you'd like to know what that is.
Just a quick curious question.
Yeah.
What do some of these windows weigh about? Like,
I would have to calculate it, but the stained glass generally weighs anywhere between 1.5 to 3 pounds a square foot. So we have to do a little bit of a calculation there. So let's say if it's on the high end where you get more intricate designs, right? Like the perimeter, you're having a lot more lead there. That could sometimes weigh close to 3 pounds a square foot. And so, let's say you have a window that's, it's 5 foot by 2 foot, right? It's 10 square feet. Could weigh 30 pounds. Just that one section. Yeah. Yes.
We had come to show a picture of the windows that a Michigan camera comes behind it.
Yeah.
How long?
I
We can't raise this, but what the second field would be walking you at the end of the environment, right? Trying to.
Sure.
That's the.
I mean, it's a good question, right? There, I just kind of gave the guys a grand total. Oftentimes, churches want to do something that's called a phased approach. There's increased cost to something like that, just more trips out and less economies of scale in terms of, in production, you get out of production and you rebuild it up, but things can be broken up in some sort of phased approach. So what I outlined here and what that church did there was that was a phase. They did, like 70% of it windows at once. Then afterwards, a couple of years, they're going to raise funds for the rest.
But so, full on university, all of it is a ticket.
Right. That's right.
How are they transported? Shut up.
In a truck and trailer.
You ordered yours.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they wouldn't be shipped.
So this month's about weeks that the windows are.
how long would we be have boarded windows?
Months. Yeah. Yeah, they would be multiple months. Yes, in the back.
You mentioned that the north window is nukes. Is its condition and therefore quite a bit better? And
Which means the one back here, and it's much better.
Okay, so, but the bid was for track include.
That is not included. Only all the ones that were done 116 years ago. And I heard you.
getting into cost a little bit, and those numbers kind of scare me, but based on my personal experience, every time I hired a contractor to do something, they've done half of it and then said, "Oh, we found this problem," blah, blah, blah. And then it's twice as much as what we agreed on.
It's a good question. No, it is a good question, and that's the purpose of the assessment, is to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen.
How does that make it not happen?
See this down to very look at it down as and
Yeah, so what we have there, that's going to be fixed costs. So there's, it is fixed. There's not going to be any adjustments after the fact. That's why we do assessments. In construction, right, oftentimes anyone who's been a property manager, right, gentleman in the back, yeah, where I like, but, in construction, there are a lot of things that you can't foresee, right? There's things behind drywall, there's hidden things, and I'm sure you guys ran into this sort of thing with your remodeling process where you pull the wall apart and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on there? Here, it's all there. We can see it all. There's nothing that's hidden, that's out of sight, and that's why we do such an in-depth assessment to see how many pieces are broken, what we're going to have to do, what's a good take, and that would get you to cost. Yeah.
So we're even at the holes that were made from the screws,
Yeah.
So if you guys like seal up the windows after those holes then covered because they're there, right? And so has there been improved during that time that you're going to water? Like
Yeah.
so that's why you set into those holes like that.
Yeah, filling the screw holes. Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that isn't included is painting, repainting the exterior, right? So we would fill that, and it really doesn't take much. That the painters usually could. You just take a little bit of epoxy, smooth it in, sand it, and then it gets painted over. Yes, in the back.
So in that process, you just described what is so the wall would rot is sever the back way and just that part thing. Like would you prepare one ride too?
It depends. So that is, I would almost akin that separate from. So that is actually a good question. That's the only unforeseen cost that you might find when you remove the sashes. The thing that I do include is it's really easy to do a simple repair on the wood rot sash in the shop. So that wouldn't incur any additional costs. But to the main frame, if that's removed, that might be something different. We might point out and say, hey, there's something going on there, right? And maybe you have to consider that. The only thing that I will say is that the windows are operable, so you can actually see a little bit of daylight sometimes underneath the windows. So I really doubt that there would be, but that is a good question. It's a good thing to pick up.
One more question, then we can take a tour.
How long is this valid for?
It's a great question. This would be fit through to this year. And after that, then the slide can change. We'll just have to read this.
And say no.
Go, please.
First of all, let's thank. So and big thanks to Debbie for all her work. So obviously, this gathering, today we're here to learn, right? We're not going to make decisions, but we're learning the information so that we know what the decision we'll have to make. I will say that if we move forward with this project, if and when we will move forward with it at some point, right? If and when we move forward with this project, the current plan, especially if it's sooner than later, is to launch this as an external campaign primarily, right? To Phil's point, he's got goes. Oh, there he is. To Phil's point, we just got done doing a significant campaign. We have identified funders, grants. We have some. We know that there's more. People are building. Why did we do all that work around getting our building on the historic preservation? Historic preservation. People love stained glass. Our church is seen as a really valuable architectural thing in this community. So the thrust of the fundraising campaign for this will be external grants. A process by which we engage the broader community in the neighborhood and people who maybe don't go to church here, but love the architectural space. We don't know exactly how much we'll be able to raise, but that is going to be the initial thrust. That does not mean that individual people within the congregation can contribute to this. Obviously, folks will be invited to do that should they want to do that, but that's not going to be the thrust of this campaign when we do it. It's going to be trying to access external resources to do this project first. So we're not going to get into that yet. I just want folks to, if your heart is racing about that number, we've got plenty of projects we're still working on, plenty of other financial commitments and things. And so I think this really is something that if we can't fund it fully, we can at least put a really good dent in that number through some of those other resources. So we'll talk more about it in the future. No decisions, but this gives us a good basis of information to make those decisions from. So
please, on the agenda, there's a QR code up there. If you will scan that, it will pull up the comprehensive assessment. It has probably about 20 more pages in it than the one that's on the tables. And you'll see how extensive, how many wax panels there are. They're all labeled, they're all identified. It's amazing. The work that they've done is just stunning. So take a look at that and you'll kind of get a better understanding of what it costs that much money, I suppose. So they take them out to bring them back. And the other cost you didn't bring up is if you do it separately, we have to pay for water each time they conjure and take them out and go back. So, yes, just mull on it, listen on it, look at it, and see what it is. And if you have any questions, me, Jeff Burst, Lynn Razel, Asha, and Carol, we have all been, we're the design team for the architect, and I have convinced them they needed to help me with this project. So they also can answer any questions that you have. Please, anytime, let me know. And without further ado, we will set up a tour if anybody wants to go. And please meet up. There's any. Thank you.